The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Earnestly Speaking podcast coming to you on Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. How you guys doing today? It's another hot-ass Tuesday here in South Florida. Lots to talk about on the podcast. Of course, this podcast you subscribe to on any podcast catcher. And I really mean that. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podbean. Am I missing anything there, guys? Am I missing any podcast catchers out there? Because I guarantee you, whatever podcast catchers out there, you're guaranteed to see the Earnestly Speaking podcast on that platform. Glad to be here today. Glad to be here. We have a lot to talk about today. First off, before we get to anything related to sports and anything of that nature, shout out to my youngest son, Logan, who last Friday graduated from pre-K. Now, for the record, I don't remember, my oldest son did it too also a couple years ago, but growing up, I remember graduating kindergarten. And I think I also graduated 5th grade, I believe. But I remember pre-K being a big deal, at least when I was a kid. Now, granted, I went to school in New York. This is like 1985. So, but I don't know. It's just, but it was great. It kind of stunk a little bit too because like they did the ceremony at school as opposed to another place to have more people, have more guests. They only allowed the parents to be there. My son couldn't even be there. My 9-year-old son couldn't even be there. He was really pissed about that. Which I'm playing for. I want my mom to be there. She couldn't be there, of course, because again, they only allow the parents there. But it was kind of cool. I mean, if you follow me on social media, I did leave a video on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter of him coming out to get his diploma, whatever they call it. I don't know what they call it for pre-K, but get his acceptance to kindergarten, when they call that, and it was kind of cool. It was really cool. A lot of the parents, they love him too, especially saying how like he's like. They love his energy and how how positive he is and how happy he is, and he's very like there's a positive energy to the class, and it's kind of cool, man, to see that people loving on your kid like that, in a lot of ways, because they say that your child reflects on what the parents are, how the parents are, and I'm a pretty positive guy. I'm pretty I'm an extrovert definitely. My wife's a more introvert, but when we're home, it's a little different, So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see people loving my kid like that a little bit and get show some respect, So it's great. As I've been saying too on the podcast for the last, last month now, almost month now, I've been having a lot of allergy issues and stuff. So there's been some health concerns on my end a little bit. I mean, I'm not dying of that nature, but I have some concerns. I have to go see a doctor soon and get things cleared up, man. But I've been feeling fatigued a lot last couple of weeks, and obviously the allergy issues, I think also is tied into that as well, because every time my eye itches or just recently my my allergies have been going through the roof, and it's just been really annoying. I actually feared that maybe I'm probably diabetic. I don't know. I don't know if I am. That definitely isn't. There's no official diagnosis on that yet. My wife actually thinks that it's very possible. But some of the things that she said that that she's concerned she's seen it with me. She said that it could lead to that. So we've been making some different changes here at home in terms of like eating, and I know in my case it's not so much the eating part, it's more so the I drink a lot of sugar. Like I love sodas and I love juices and all that stuff. And I drink water too, but I probably don't drink enough water in comparison to what I drink. Everything else. So we've been making some adjustments at home. For example, I started drinking unsweetened iced tea again, which I actually do enjoy, to be honest with you. So something I'm gonna have to adjust to. Stop buying sodas at home. I think the big challenge for me really at this point, more than anything else, is because I've stopped drinking soda at some points in my life, and at certain points in my life, because I just had to, and it's helped obviously, but it's you never really killed the addiction. So my wife was saying, what we should do instead of you just going cold turkey is to just try doing stop drinking at home for starters. Then try just do maybe one a day only, as opposed to just going cold turkey. So I allow myself to drink like a couple sips here and there a day just to kind of get the the urge out of my system. It's been okay so far. So, but yeah, it's time to take things seriously here at home. It's also the title of this podcast today. Time to take things serious because that's what it means. So hopefully, that we I can get better in that. Like I said, I'm gonna go see a doctor at some point next month or so, hopefully, and then go from there and see what happens. But I'm not getting younger. I'm 42 years old. I've always said that one of my biggest fears is not that fear of dying. Like, obviously, I have those fears, obviously, but the fears of dying and not seeing my kids get older. I want to see my kids get older, go to college, get married, have their own kids. I'd be a grandparent, and my wife and I live out our final days, older, retired, and enjoying the world. That's I don't want to, struggle with health issues in my 60s. My dad's my inspiration from that point of view. My father, mid 60s, looks fantastic. Never had any really major health issues in his life. Maybe we'll never on the podcast we'll discuss that. But he's taken going to the gym and health even more serious now than he's ever had in his entire life. He's a regular gym. He does a lot of like stuff that trainer work and all that of that nature on the side and all that. He's very passionate about that, and it used to annoy me a little bit before because he's like every phone call we have is like, you need to do this, you need to drink this, and you need to get your health in order. And he's not that he's wrong. He's actually correct on that. But as a kid, you're like, all right, we get it. Yes, we get it. You got to take it seriously. But as you get older, you start taking that advice as like, yeah, he's not wrong there. And in fact, it is time to probably implement those principles he's throwing at me, into action in my personal life. So we'll see what happens there. I'm going to try also to, especially now this is the last week of school for the kids. I would like to start get up in the morning early, like maybe half an hour earlier than I normally get up. I get up at 7 o'clock normally in the morning, take kids to school about 7:30, 8 o'clock. Then I go to work. But I would like to get up even earlier at say 6:30 in the morning, start walking around my lake. Just doing little things, walking and jogging around before I get my day started. I need to start implementing some of those old principles like I used to have. I used to be a fitness geek back in the day. I used to be, very serious about working out and going to the gym and eating semi-healthier. But of course, that was a lot easier back when you're in your 20s with less stress, no kids, no marriage, all those things. And now it's something where you have to fit it in and you got to prioritize it and you have to make sure you stick with it because consistency matters, So we're going to be doing that here. It's personally for me, is try to get this health stuff in order. Anyway. NBA conference finals, East and West. There's definitely a tale of two different series here. You got one series right now as of this recording. One team is on the verge of sweeping another. The other two teams are in a dead heat, 2-2. Heat Celtics. Boston bounces back in Game 4 without Marcus Smart. And being someone who's tied into the Miami Heat culture, community, on social media, family who love the Heat, trying to find answers why did the Heat lose that game on Monday? Why did they not take a 3-1 series commanding series lead? And there's really nothing to figure out here if you watch Game 4. Miami lost Game 4 simply because they couldn't make a shot. It's that simple. Like the way they started the game, they were getting good looks. In fact, I was saying too that it was so horrific that they're passing about open shots. I mean, PJ Tucker typically makes that corner three on the regular, and he was passing up at least 2 or 3 shots early in the game for an extra pass, So I tweeted in the game that early on I was like, I feel like Miami's throwing this game because we all knew that Boston would get the home cooking from the referees and the home crowd and all that. Boston was going to get the calls. And they did. They got 26 free throw attempts in the first half. But Miami didn't do themselves any favors. They lost game 4 simply. They weren't even in Game 4 simply because they couldn't make any shots. This is the make or miss league, period, in discussion. And the worst part is that Boston didn't shoot any better in this game, rather. They shot, 41% from the field in the first half? But they were up by 20-plus points at halftime. So again, Miami shot themselves in the foot. And now we got a 2-2 series now. This series is definitely, I'll say it's going 7. Now, this is what I will say, and I am sticking to what I said before the series started. The winner of Game 5 is most likely to win this series. In fact, this is how I feel. If Miami wins Game 5, they'll win in 7 games. I think they'll probably lose Game 6, and they'll find my Game 7 to lose. Not saying it's not guaranteed, obviously. But if Boston wins Game 5 tomorrow night, down here in FTX Arena, of course, I say down here because we're in South Florida. If Boston finds a way to win Game 5, they're winning it on Friday night in Game 6. And it's funny. I want the Heat to win this series as soon as possible because my buddy and I, my fellow co-host of the Take the Wrestling podcast, Mikey B, and I are planning on going to watch AEW Double or Nothing on Sunday night at the movie theater here in Boca Raton. That is the early plans right now. However, I did tell him that if there's Game 7, and Game 7 does fall on Sunday, count me out, because there's no way how I'm going to be leaving the Heat game. The Heat game comes first before anything else. There's no way how I can go watch a wrestling pay-per-view and be focused on and not be focused on the Heat game. I'm no good to you being there watching the event. So I will be locked in for the Heat game for Game 7 if there's a Game 7 on Sunday night. But I think the likelihood of Game 7 happening is pretty high. I mean, I said Heat in 7 before the series started. So this is very much a 7-game series in my opinion. But I do think winning Game 5 will probably win the series. I think Boston wins Game 5. It's very likely they'll win Game 6. This series really reminds me of the 2013 NBA Finals, Spurs and Heat, where there were a bunch of blowout, like a series that was tight in terms of the series, but each game had a different narrative. Most of the games had blowouts. You had the Game 2 blowout from Boston. Miami was actually a big Game 3 before blowing that lead late, before they held on. And then Game 4 was a blowout by Boston as well, too. Miami won Game 1 as well in a pretty much fairly blowout fashion. So it reminds me of 2013 NBA Finals a little bit. And yet, we're now in a 2-2 series now. So, as for the other series in the West, Golden State and Dallas, I told you about before the season started. Just because Dallas took Phoenix to 7 games and won in 7 games, this is a different situation here. Like, this was a bad matchup from Dallas. Golden State's a bad matchup with Dallas. And I told everybody before the series started, they had no shot. I mean, you have Luka, and Luka didn't show up. And I said this, Luka will always show up. But unless you tell me the other guys on that team we're going to consistently step up every single game like they did against Phoenix, specifically the last 5 games against Phoenix, there's no reason to believe that the Mavericks are going to win this series. In fact, I said this, that I had Golden State in 5 with a strong possibility of a sweep. And as we sit here now, approaching Game 4 tonight, a sweep is to be possible. I think Dallas might still win this game just out of pure desperation. And maybe because they'll probably get more calls too, especially because the NBA wants to have more games. Obviously, let's be real. It's called what it is. But a sweep is to be possible tonight. I told you, buddy, this is a bad matchup. And of course, we talk about the situation, and now obviously Golden State now on the verge of going to the NBA Finals again. What is it, 6th time in the last 8 years, something like that? I don't have the number in front of me, but it's definitely a bunch. Steph Curry's coming back into focus now. Steph Curry now and the legacy and all that. And we've discussed Steph Curry in this podcast quite a few times about where he stands among the great point guards, among the great players, and all that. And I gotta be honest with you, I had to do some think about this because and this really hurts me a little bit. I don't say hurts me, but this really impacts me personally. Because I'm the biggest Magic Johnson. First off, Magic Johnson is my all-time favorite athlete in the history of sports. Period. End of discussion. Let's start there. But I've come to terms with something here, and something that may happen, but this has to happen too. I think Steph Curry has a real chance to become the greatest point guard ever. Now, not saying it's going to happen, but again, we've had discussions about where he ranks around the all-time greats in the points. We all have him in top 3. I think most people have him in top 3 still. I for years I battled between him and Isaiah Thomas for the number 2 spot. I've in recent years put Curry in that spot at number 2 because number 1, he has more rings. Number 2, he's a more impactful player. So at some point you have to show respect for there. And this is coming from someone who, Isaiah Thomas, myself, is one of my 3 favorite players of all time. The other one being Charles Barkley. Magic Johnson, Charles Barkley, Isaiah Thomas, in that order. But I don't think it's inconceivable to think that Steph Curry could be the greatest point guard of all time. At all. Seriously. The thing to me that hurts Steph Curry right now, he's had a lot of playoff blunders, number one, for starters. Especially in the Game 7 against the Cavs 2016. But also, he doesn't have any finals MVPs at all. He's won 3 titles. First title, Andre Iguodala won the MVP. The next 2 won by Kevin Durant. So this is where we're at now with Steph Curry. If he wins the title this year, okay, along with Finals MVP, this is what happens to Steph Curry in the legacy here, in my opinion. Okay, he starts inching closer to Magic Johnson, one in terms of the greatest point guard of all time. Okay, let's start there. Number 2, he officially puts distance between himself and Kevin Durant, because there's a lot of talk, especially the last couple of years when Durant went to Golden State, won two rings, and we can agree that Kevin Durant is probably still the better player. Okay, I mean, skill wise, but Kevin Durant last couple of years not getting done. Brooklyn, injuries, you name it. Steph Curry continues to thrive. Okay, and I think you see Steph Curry put distance into from Kevin Durant with another finals win, because now that's another ring without Durant. That's 4 rings, 2 without Durant. The first one, and then now this last one. If he also wins Finals MVP finally, I truly believe Steph Curry knocks on the door of a top 10 discussion. I'm not talking about top 10 all time. Okay, the top 10. The top 10 you talk about when you talk about Jordan and Bird and Magic and Kobe and Duncan and Russell and Wilt. Who am I missing? Shaq. LeBron, of course. You know what I mean. I think Steph Curry knocks on the door of the top 10 discussion. I'm not saying that he will be officially top 10, but I think the conversation starts to open up, because Steph Curry will have many things, for starters. Number 1, you have the legacy, you have the longevity now. I think this is now, year 14 in the league now? Okay, year 13, year 14 in the league. He's still playing peak basketball. You can easily see Steph Curry playing another 7 years. Honestly. Okay? As long as he stays healthy. Okay? He's changed the game of basketball on top of that. Let's keep it real about that one. Okay? He's changed the game of basketball. Longevity, changing basketball, rings, 4 rings, okay, and then winning another ring without the best player he's played with in Kevin Durant. So the legacy factor becomes much more open now for Steph Curry. I'm comfortable saying that he'll be knocking on the door of top 10. I don't think he'll get top 10 at that point, but I think you have the conversation, and I think also he probably need a 5th ring probably to really seriously open the discussion to where he does crack the top 10. Well, actually, no. The 5th ring will actually put him in the top 10 with another Finals MVP for the record. So, just something to look at. Just something in terms of in terms of as you get through these next couple of weeks now. He has 5 wins to go to change the discussion. Staying in basketball, the Lakers, of course, always at the top of the discussion. The Los Angeles Lakers. Coaching search update. They've now narrowed their search to 3 guys. Bucks assistant Darvin Ham. Warriors assistant and former Nets head coach Kenny Atkinson. And former Blazers head coach Terry Stotts. I mean, I like Stotts. I like Atkinson. I don't know much about Ham. Obviously, he's a good assistant in Milwaukee. He should get a job. But this is not coaching. The problem is this is not like you're coaching some regular NBA team. Okay, you got to be really ready to coach this Lakers team, especially if you were to believe that Russell Westbrook is back for another season. Okay, this is you got to be someone that's mentally ready to deal with the pressure of being a Laker head coach. Frank Vogel just won a title 2 years ago. 2 years later, he's fired. That just shows you the Evan Poole being a Lakers coach. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying that it's something that how Lakers should handle things. In fact, I said Frank Vogel probably got a raw deal, but they had to do what they had to do because he did not. The situation warranted someone with a little more, should I say, flair, if you will. Someone like a Phil Jackson. Well, not now Phil Jackson, but someone who can handle those personalities. I would say like someone like Mark Jackson. I would say Doc Rivers, maybe. Those kind of guys who could handle the personalities of LeBron James and Russell Westbrook, if he's still there, of course. And then and handling this to being the coach of the Lakers. The Lakers are a legacy team. These three guys, I think, are fantastic coaches. I just don't know if they fit the Laker brass, if they fit the Laker culture. That's the issue. Anyway, so NFL talk here. Peter King, probably the most popular NFL writer in the history of journalism, just released his NFL preseason power rankings on NBC Sports. So I want to go through it real quick. I'm going to give you the top 10, his top 10, right, in order, and see where we stand with that one. His top 10 so far, he has the Bills, Chargers, Chiefs, Rams, Packers, Bucks, Bengals, Ravens, Eagles, and Niners. Okay, the top 10, the only one, I think the only thing that really glares at me, I think Bills number one is not a problem. I have no problem with that. I think the Bills are favorites when the whole thing next year to win the Super Bowl. I think they're primed for that. Remember they also signed Von Miller, one of the most underrated signings this offseason. No one's really talking about that. Even though he's a little older, but still. Chargers number 2, a little high. I mean, I know folks were high on Justin Herbert last year, and it's less about Herbert and more about that coach, Brandon Staley. Are we sure Brandon Staley is good enough to uplift this team into this kind of stratosphere? Not ready for that. I think Chargers way too high. Chiefs are fine. Rams, whatever, 4 could be a little higher, but I'm okay with that. Packers, they have Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, no more receivers, all that. But Aaron Rodgers always finds a way, and I'm not going to sit and doubt him, so I'll leave him. 5 is fine with the Packers. Bucks at 6, okay. Lost some guys. Brady's a little year older, but Brady's still Brady. I think 7 Bengals, a little disrespect there in my opinion, because, they are the AFC champions, and the issue they had last year, they, on paper anyway, fixed. Patching the O-line. That was still an issue. They went to a Super Bowl with a bad O-line, and they've signed guys, and since then, and what we believe have repaired that situation for the Bengals. So, my opinion, a little low. Ravens at 8 is fine. Lamar Jackson is still a top 10 quarterback in the league. We'll discuss that later on this weekend's podcast. Eagles at 9. I'm a little surprised, I guess, but the A.J. Brown signing, is actually a big one. I think a lot of people are big on the Eagles. Obviously their playoff team last year. I just don't know if the top 10 yet. 10 the Niners. I know went to the championship game last year, but they still have quarterback issues. Who's the quarterback, Garoppolo or Trey Young? We don't know. We'll see what happens. Or Trey Lance, rather. We'll see what happens there. All right, here's next 10. 10 from 11 through 20. Here's his 11 through 20 here. He has the Saints, Titans, Raiders, Broncos, Cowboys, Dolphins, Patriots, Browns, Vikings, and then number 20, the Lions. The Lions, yes. The team that had the second worst record in football last year. Saints feel kind of high. I know that some good signings here, but we do remember that Sean Payton's not there anymore, right? Let's remember that. Titans at 12. Titans are, they're middle of the road, of course. I mean, they're solid team. They got Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill's not terrible, but you know what you get with the Titans. 13 the Raiders. Raiders feel low. Raiders should be a lot higher than this. I think the Raiders should be. I think the Raiders should be number 10, if anything. 14 the Broncos. Russell Wilson. That feels a little low with Russell Wilson being there, but again, they're probably making space for adjusting. 15 the Cowboys, feels low as well too. We'll see. 16 the Dolphins, feels right. Patriots 17, feels kind of high actually, it's just a tad high. Browns 18, we don't know what's going on to Deshaun Watson. We'll see what happens there. 19 Vikings, we'll see. Lions at 20, feels kind of high, but again, last year they a lot of games they lost. They should have won. They lost like 7 points or less. So we got to give them credit for there. So here's the next 10 here. The next 10 here, well, actually the next 12. We'll get the next 12 from 21 through 32. The Colts, Cardinals, Steelers, Giants, Seahawks, Commanders, former Redskins, of course, a football team, what I call that. The Jets, the Bears, the Jaguars, 30 the Falcons, 31 the Panthers, and 32 the Texans. Okay, so Giants feel kind of high at 24, in my opinion. Steelers feel kind of low at 23. Cardinals feel kind of low as well, too, at 22, as does the Colts at 21. The Colts to sign Matt Ryan. The Colts, to me, should be a little higher than that. The Cardinals feel low, but I think also with the suspension of the receiver, Hopkins, that probably is an issue, added with the fact that the Kyler Murray stuff and the infighting there with the team and all that, I think stable. Seahawks feel kind of high. They're bottom 3 team, in my opinion, in the league right now. Washington Commanders feel a little low as well, too. Jets, whatever. Jets are bottom 4 or 5 team in the league, so whatever. Bears, right where they need to be. Jaguars, kind of the same. Falcons, Marcus Mariota, of course, he's a quarterback, so obviously they're building. Panthers and Texans to round it out feels about right. Although I will say the Texans did play a lot better at the end of the year last year, so there's something to talk about there. That's Peter King's preseason rankings, which means shit in the end of the day because it's preseason rankings, right? Come on now. Daniel Snyder, Washington Commanders owner, his day, scandal-filled administration, want to call that, years as being owner of the former Washington Redskins, formerly Washington football team, now the Commanders. It looks like his days of being the owner of the team may be numbered. From CBS Sports reads this: with the Commanders currently being investigated by Congress as well, and the financial questions surfacing during their probe and leading to a separate but connected investigation by the Federal Trade Commission and the Virginia Attorney General, there is no shortage to the amount of PR damage being taken on by the league, as Snyder remains in battle in his troubles, and questions on if and when he'd be voted out has taken the forefront of many conversations around the league. It's not a surprise. But between all the sexual assault allegations and stuff that happened a couple years ago, we saw between the name change stuff and it seems like every year we get a new scandal involving Dan Snyder and the Washington football team, or the Commanders. I have to get used to this, by the way, the Commanders. I have to get used to that. There's always something going on, An anonymous team owner said this from USA Today, quoting, "There's growing frustration about the Washington situation, and not over one issue, but over how much smoke there is. I think everybody's getting tired of it. I think us as fans have long been done Dan Snyder for years. Owners, obviously it impacts their more money and shared revenue. So yeah. Now, do you believe Dan Snyder will be cut loose as owner? That's the question. I don't know yet. I will probably still lean no. I think he'll find a way to keep control. But I will think it's something to look at. I think the more pressure that's being put on Dan Snyder, he may not necessarily, get voted out, but maybe he decides to, you know what, screw this, fuck it, I'm going to go and sell this team and just go live my life and I'm rich and go away from it. Because, obviously his PR is so damaged. He has probably the worst PR of any NFL owner in this league, and that's saying something concerning, Robert Kraft. He's gone through with some of the cheating scandals and all that and all that, so that's saying something, But yeah, something to look at in the coming days, in weeks and all that. Saying the NFL, of course, the NFL is considering getting rid of the Pro Bowl. Whatever, who cares? They've tried fixing this Pro Bowl thing for years. Putting it in Miami, putting it in Hawaii, putting it here. Doesn't matter. The Pro Bowl, for what it's worth, though, real quick, the Pro Bowl does have decent numbers in comparison to what it should have. I've never been a fan of Pro Bowl anyway. I've never, at any point in my life, as a child, teenager, even adult, never cared for the Pro Bowl at all. But, it's one of those things where, and still trying to tweak it, trying to get rid of it. A lot of it, too, is also lack of participation by players who don't want to play it and risk getting hurt and all that. Whatever. If they get rid of the Pro Bowl, I don't care either, honestly. I really don't, honestly don't care. If they do, they don't. If they do, they do. They don't, whatever. But I will say, for the record, that for what it's worth, the NFL, I don't think the NFL is honestly losing money in the Pro Bowl. I don't know if this is true or not. I don't think the NFL is losing money on the Pro Bowl. I think they actually get solid ratings for the Pro Bowl, considering what it is. I've seen the Pro Bowl get numbers to where it's comparable to, NBA numbers of a regular game or playoff game. So when you look at it from that angle, it's better than nothing, I guess. If you want to keep doing it, keep doing it. Who gives a shit? But if it goes away, I don't care either, honestly. Dwayne The Rock Johnson has no movie commitments for the first quarter of 2023. Of course, when you hear that, as a wrestling fan, you think, first quarter 2023, what goes on around the first quarter 2023? Wrestlemania season around that time. Okay? And for years, the last couple of years, we've been hearing about these potential rumors about him and Roman Reigns going at it at WrestleMania. We thought maybe this year could happen, maybe last year. But obviously COVID ended all that speculation, of course. But no commitments to 2023. It does raise the speculation. Is a match against Roman Reigns up in the cards. Roman Reigns, obviously the guy in WWE. He has, he is the man, and he'd be the last legacy guy he had to go through. Really, he went through John Cena last year at SummerSlam and all that, and Edge the year before, the same year. The thing is, before we speculate, even Dave Meltzer's sorry ass jumped in and said it. It could definitely be conversation. And I'm not saying he's not wrong, but But this is my speculation too. Also, with the clear schedule, I'm going to be a little more transparent here too. The clear schedule for The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, could also mean more time dedicated to XFL that launches around the same time. The XFL launches next year around the same time. The Rock is actually is the owner of the XFL, so you have to consider that as well too as a reason why maybe he has a clear schedule. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I'm not saying that it's 0% chance. If you give me a percent chance that The Rock does come back for WrestleMania next year, I'll say about 30%, because you have to at least leave it open. He's never shut the door on the idea of that happening, and I think that would be probably the last thing The Rock would do before calling it quits. Is getting Roman over. I think number one, I think Roman will win that match. The book it as such, and that will be to put Roman over the top. You know what I'm saying? And The Rock has had a history of doing that anyway. He did it with John Cena in 2013. With their 2-year WrestleMania, back-to-back years, main eventing WrestleMania. So something to look at. But like I said, I would definitely keep an eye out on that story. But I don't think it's as slam dunk as you think it is. By the way, HBO's Waiting Time is amazing. Please go watch it. I'm still 2 more episodes away from finishing it. I'm probably going to finish this first season tonight. Maybe in the next pod I'll review it. Probably on the next pod I have to do it later in the week. Review it. We'll see what happens. Joe Biden's latest approval ratings have come out, and he is a little politics talk here. As of this week, he's at hovering around 40%. It is currently the lowest point of the Joe Biden presidency. It's actually lower than Donald Trump's numbers at this point 4 years ago. It's really, really fascinating to see how this is a disastrous first 2 years, optically speaking, for Joe Biden. Nothing seems to work. You have inflation. You have the Ukraine war. You have gas prices going through the fucking roof. So much stuff. And again, I'm not saying I blame it all on him. But again, when we talk about presidencies, talk about who's in charge at the time things happen. It always falls on the guy in charge in the moment. Even if it's fair or not. I'm not saying it's fair. It's sometimes unfair. People blaming the gas prices on Joe Biden. I mean, whatever. I don't think you can blame it on Joe Biden at all. I think it's just bad timing. I think because every country in this planet, Germany has $6 gas prices as well too, and Joe Biden is not the leader of Germany, so it can't just be on the guys in charge. We have to be a little more smart about this. But again, that's when people who don't follow politics and they're in their camps and in their little holes, red or blue team. They want to push narratives that they believe I would help their side win, politically speaking. I'm still skeptical that the Roe v. Wade stuff, that, obviously leaking of the Roe v. Wade draft that came out a few weeks back will be enough to stop the bleeding for the massacre I'm going to see in November's midterms. The red wave I expect to see in the midterms. We'll see if that has any way of saving Democrats in November. Remains to be seen. I'm very skeptical about that. But I will say this much in terms of talking about Joe Biden's approval rating. Democrats are going to have to make really big decisions in the next year or two. In the next year, really, be honest with you, as to whether Joe Biden is even viable politically to run for re-election. This midterms are going to say a lot about where they stand. Because Joe Biden's 80, I think he's 80 now. Okay, he'll be 82 at re-election if he even gets reelected. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to sound like an ageist here, but that's a pretty weird optics as it is anyway. So, depending on how the Democrats do these midterms, it's going to be very interesting to see what direction they go in terms of who they're going to push out to the front for the 2024 election, presidential election rather. Like I said, it's going to be a very fascinating 6 months, and we'll see where that leads. Obviously, when we talk politics on this podcast, we're going to be picking up the political talk on the show probably a little more now as we get into closer to the midterms here, which leads me to the next thing here on the docket here before we get going. We're going to start doing, you guys have seen it on this podcast the last 6 months. We've been adding more concepts to the show. Initially it was thought to be a podcast network. This is not a podcast. It's not necessarily a podcast network. Okay, necessarily. Because to me, if you're doing a podcast network, to me, it never require having people on the network that have their own shows that I don't host on it as well. Every show that I've done, every concept I've done on this show so far in the last 6 months has had me involved in it, And for me to have an actual network, it would require people having their own shows onto this feed. We don't have that. I'm involved in every single show. So in a lot of ways, like this is not really a podcast network. This is more like this is a podcast with different concepts, basically shows within shows. So like obviously you have our normal stuff here. What I do here, whether it's a solo podcast, random conversations / interviews, what it may be. Okay, but then you've noticed I've done, especially during the in season, NFL season especially too. I do a weekly football show called Football's Awesome. Okay, that's done once a week. Okay. And I also have an NBA focused show called In the Paint, which by the way I may be changing the title of that show next season because I'm not really too fond of it, to be honest with you. And then I've added more stuff in recent months. I've added this something called the Wrestling Retrospective, which is something I do that ties my passion to wrestling. Whether it be watch-alongs, whether it be watch-alongs and just talking about stuff from yesteryear, conversations, whatever it may be. And I've added more things of that nature. I obviously brought on the Tasty Wrestling Podcast, a podcast I've been hosting for 2 years with my buddies Mike and Joe, throughout on this feed as well too. So and that's consistent every week. We do that podcast every Thursday night, put out on Fridays. That's done every single week, and I focus on the world of wrestling. We got more concepts coming up in the coming days. Actually, to be honest with you, you guys know Kyle Nash, Big Jim, James Neese on the podcast all the time, whether it be on Football's Awesome, whether it be random conversations, or it may be. We have a group text that we've been doing for the last 2 years now, and it inspired me because we have some really great conversations, not just football. We talk about anything, So it inspired me to say, well, we should turn this chat we do and kind of bring it onto the podcast. Like, I don't want it to be just a sports show either. That concept. I want to be something that we just talk about things that are in the world or random things or food or whatever it is, just whatever we want to talk about, things we talk about, in the open on our chat. And I have this joke, where we'll call it anytime we would discuss like stuff randomly on our chat, I will always put like a reply of saying hashtag foul for content. So I told the guys recently, it's like, we should just do this a podcast, like, that should be every week, it could be once a month or whatever it may be. And we should call it hashtag foul for content. So we're going to do that. We're actually starting to record our first episode tonight. So we'll probably put it out either tomorrow or Thursday this week. But that's the idea for that one. So that's one concept we're doing now going forward. The next one is gonna be a political concept I want to start doing with my buddy Mark Francois. Mark Francois has a regular podcast. Although I haven't seen him in a while on the show, but we're working on a schedule to do this going forward. And especially now with midterms coming up too. He's been on the show from the beginning, pretty much since 2012. Especially in recent years, the last 6 years, we talk a lot about politics. I know some guys not into politics in this podcast. That's fine. You're allowed to be that way. But we want to have a avenue where we can have a platform where we can just discuss things involving politics, but also just things around the world where it impacts politics. So we're working on a show. We're working on names right now as it is right now. Hopefully in the next couple weeks, we start doing that. That podcast. It'll be centered around politics and all the stuff around that. And we're working on a name for that. But that's another concept coming up in the near future. Looking for that as well. Other than that, like I said, reporting summer now. My kids are gonna be out of school after this Thursday. So, and like for example, right now. So right now I'm recording on Tuesday afternoon. My kids are normally in school Tuesday afternoons, but as of the next week, I'm gonna lose Tuesday afternoons for about 8 weeks because no school all of June, all of July, and the beginning of August. So I'm actually more than 8 weeks. So that may impact the schedule of the podcast going forward. And not only that, you guys do this podcast for years. You guys know that typically during the summer, I do slow down anyway. I tend to lessen episodes. Sometimes I even take as much as 2 weeks off from podcasting, just kind of recharge a little bit. I'll take like 2 weeks in July off, just kind of relax. So the schedule right now might be a little thinner, maybe with some of the shows I'm doing going forward after this week. We'll see how that goes, especially after the NBA Finals are over. So you might see the solo shows drop now Tuesday nights or Wednesday mornings, opposed to like Tuesday afternoon, like right now. So, and I was doing a daily thing for a couple weeks recently. That was mainly because of the NBA playoffs. There was so much to talk about at the time too. Also, that may come back some point. I would like at some point to do a daily show. That'd be a great idea to do a daily podcast, 20, 30 minutes episode, probably in studio, especially too. I just don't know if it's possible with the schedule. I don't know how my schedule will look like in the fall once we get the kids in school. Because my youngest starting kindergarten in August. My son started 4th grade in August as well, too. We don't know how it'll look like in terms of schedule, in terms of, like, homework. And so, I mean, there'll be some openings here to do some stuff here and there. But again, between the schedule, between burnout, between work, everything else, I got to keep things balanced. So what I've been trying to do is do at least 2 of these solo podcasts. I try to record a lot of my stuff on Tuesdays because I know that's the one day where I have autonomy to record whenever I want, even at nighttime. So I'll throw in interviews. I'll like record a solo show here, like right now, for example. Okay, then I'll do football. For example, Football's Awesome is recorded on Tuesdays as well too. I record all the segments on Tuesdays to drop on Wednesdays. But also, if I do a conversation with someone, I record it on Tuesdays as well too, and then drop it on Wednesday. And then I'll do another 30-minute solo podcast on Thursdays, drop it on Fridays. So, but that may be impacted a little bit this summer. We'll see how that goes. Also, my kids, they need to do activities. I don't want them to sit on their iPads all summer long. We got to make sure they have things to do, So it's my job as a father to make sure they're active. So that may actually impact some things going forward. So, like I said, I'm not saying things are going to drastically change, but expect this stuff to slow down just a little bit. In the coming weeks and months. Like I said, nothing is definitely in stone yet, so don't be worried about that. But just getting you guys know that things are going to be tweaking a little bit, and in the fall time, we'll obviously discuss the fall when things get to the point of talking about the fall stuff and all that. But that's what's going on now here on the Speaking Podcast. But again, look out for the like I said today, I'm recording 2 more podcasts. Another episode I'm doing tonight, recording a episode with a first time guest on the show. You'll see that tomorrow morning on the feed. Also recording the File for Content first episode with Kyle and Jim tonight as well too. That's the schedule. Dropping that either tonight or Thursday. We'll see what happens, how I feel. And then we do take 3 every week with me, Mike, and Joe. That's not even impacted. That's already built into my schedule as it is anyway. So well, like I said, things are gonna be okay. We'll be all right. Just bear with me, of course. And like I said, if I drop episodes randomly, like just to talk about things in the open about basketball, if I get time tomorrow night to do a podcast reacting to something that happened in the NBA or something that's going on in the NFL, because like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things going on. I mean, like I said, we talk about more in the sports and on the show too. We talk about, like I said, politics and TV and all that. So look out for that. But that's it. I am winded now. I am tired. 1 podcast down, 2 to go for today. Again, follow me on Twitter. EJ Christian 7, Earnestly Podcast, and all podcast catchers. Especially, guys, please subscribe to Earthspeaking Media on YouTube. YouTube especially is a platform I'm definitely pushing heavily these days. You'll get clips of the show on there as well too. You'll see the video. Now these solo shows typically are on video, but the ones I do with with Take 3 and the ones I do with In the Paint or even the conversations are actually video as well too. So look out for that as well on the YouTube page. In fact, all the concepts I was saying, like In the Paint and Football's Awesome and Take 3, all have their own playlists too on the YouTube page, on Earnestly Media YouTube page. So anyway, that will do it for me today's show. We'll get back to you hopefully on Thursday's next solo episode I got scheduled. So until then, EJ Christian 7 on Twitter, Earnestly Media on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. Till then, guys, love you guys. Stay up, stay positive, and we'll talk soon. Later.